Hello, Brother Sewing and Crafting family. Do we have a fun show for you today? Welcome to the party. I'm Angela Wolf, Brother Brand Ambassador.
Hello, I'm May Flaum, Brother Brand Ambassador.
And we are so excited to see you. May, I don't know about you, but July is my favorite month for a lot of reasons. One, because it's usually really nice outside here in Michigan. But my most favorite is what you're working on today because you always remind me to get ready for the holidays now.
I do. Summer is actually my least favorite season. I know. I feel like you're either one way or the other, but it's just always just so hot, and I'm always looking for projects that I can make in a batch, come up here to the studio in the morning when it's cooler. Notice I didn't say cooler. And get a bunch of stuff going that I can maybe do, buy a fan or somewhere nice and cool, or in other words, just kind of batch create so I'm not just always up here at the desk. So today we've got a fun one because we are getting ready. We are kind of amping up and pre-preparing. And I know it seems early because it's only July, but for me, there's a couple of things I like. I like getting ahead of it because we all know things sneak up, and by the time you hit November 15th, it's like blink and it's New Year, right? It goes fast. And we also know that things just have a way of kind of getting in the way, or things get slowed up. So having things done a little bit of ahead means that they'll actually get done. So I always say right now is the time I start thinking about if I want to make any handmade gifts. I start thinking about what will I need, how much time will it take, and all that kind of stuff. The other thing we can do, though, is cards. And we're going to be talking about the ScanNCut DX and how we can scan stamps or other things in there to make cards. But I'm also going to give you a really simple formula so you can just crank them out. They can be custom, but you can also have a formula and crank them out. You kind of have handmade, but also a system to it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you craft for somebody else.
That's awesome. So if you didn't catch on, it's Christmas in July, regardless if you like it, if it's hot or not. I love Christmas in July, May, because every year you remind me to start making my cards. And if you've missed any of May's last shows through the years of Christmas in July, you have cards for gifts. You have cards for so many different things. So after this show, if you go back to Brother Crafts, which is where we're live streaming on YouTube and Facebook, go back and watch all of her episodes, and you will have a lot of fun with your ScanNCut in the sewing room. So May, I'm going to let you take it away, and I'm going to start taking notes.
Okay, well, we will. So we're going to be making cards, and we're going to cut out stamps is what I'm going to do. So this could be a stamp. This could also be if you have clip art that you want to cut around, hand drawings. It can be whatever you want it to be. We just need an exterior line to get started. So we head on over to the ScanNCut. I'll show you what I'm talking about, and we'll get a few images stamped up so that we can get them cut out. So on the machine, we're going to be going into scan, but we have to have something to scan before we get that far. So setting my mat and everything out of our way, I have some watercolor paper today because watercolor paper, it's just going to be easier. That's the long and the short of it is the watercolor paper is going to be easier because it's a texture and it's absorbing in a way that it will let us do, well, whatever we want to do. If we want to color, if we want to blend, if we try, and I'll just show you a quick little example here, just to explain a little better. If we're coloring on watercolor paper, we can do, and it doesn't matter what you've got. If you've got paintbrushes, if you've got water pens, I mean, whatever it is you've got, whatever it is you'd like to use. But if we blend, we can do different blending, and we can make different colors and do different things, and the paper will stay. That's my point. The paper, there's nothing going wrong with the paper. If we try to do this and we are on, say, a thin piece of paper, maybe a thin piece of cardstock, we can go for a while there, but fairly quickly, what's going to happen here is all of that effort and everything, we're going to very quickly find a couple of things. The paper is going to warp, and it's also going to start to little balls of paper fluff are going to start coming up. This one's holding up kind of good, but I can already see if I start rubbing my finger, little rolls of paper are going to come off because I'm making the paper angry because this is not watercolor paper. So versus this, you know, I can keep blending, I can keep adding, and it'll be just fine because it's watercolor paper. It's made for water. So keep that in mind. If you're going to use just say regular colored pencils, if you're going to be using products that it doesn't really matter, then absolutely you'll be fine with just regular paper. I think of colored pencils. If you're going to have maybe a child use crayons and color with crayon, there's a lot of different, some certain pens will work really well. There's a lot of different products that will work really well with just a regular cardstock. If you're using anything that you're doing blending or getting water in there, you're probably wanting watercolor paper. So I am going to I'm just kind of making sure I'm pressing all over evenly and firmly, because once I lift this, it's over, right? Because I've got a wood mounted stamp. Now, that came out really pretty. I'm going to show you a little trick with that in a moment. We're going to get a couple other things stamped because if I'm going to go ahead and get all of this stuff going, I might as well get a couple, right? So I've got my little puppy with the presents there. And we'll do one more. We'll do two more. We'll get a little snowman. Now, he didn't turn out very good in his hat. That's okay.
Those are so cute, May. I love that big one.
That stamp got a little messy. So there we go. Okay. So I'm going to get my stamps out of the way here. Everybody out of the way. So we've got a couple different things to remember. When the ScanNCut looks at this, it's looking for the outline. So it's going to follow all the way around the very outside of the line. If I've got any spots, like right here, you see how the edge of his hat, it did not stay solid. Now, it's not a problem. I'm going to be able to color that in. It's going to look fine. I don't need to throw it away. But right here, it's going to come in because there is not a line. So all I'm going to do here is just use my black pen. And if you're worried about, oh, that's going to look funny, or I'm going to be able to see that, amazingly, when this is all done, no, you won't. You won't see it at all. So I'm just touching up here a bit. And it's okay if it's not perfect. Don't stress if it's not perfect. So by making a solid line, you're giving it a line. And that's the rule I always tell people. If you're trying to get the ScanNCut to cut around something and it's going inside, that means you have a break in the line. Excuse me. So on this one, I'm going to have to do the same thing where I just have to make sure. And some stamps already have a line. Like our little puppy dog, he has a line. He's fine. This one has a break. So I'm going to have to close it. That's all I have to do is just make sure that line is closed. And if you aren't sure, or if you think your line's okay, but you're not quite sure, all you have to do is scan it in once and you'll know. And we'll see. We'll see if I've closed this up, it will turn out really well. If I haven't, like right here, there's not a close. So I'm just going to close that little pine cone. And I am using an ink that will not smudge. Same with my pen, just a smudge-proof, water-resistant pen and ink. This way, when I go to color, I'm not going to get reactive ink. So we don't want that. Now, because this is watercolor paper, I am using a standard mat, not a low-tack mat, because it is a heavier paper. And I'm just going to go ahead and load right up there. And I'll show you. We'll see how well I did. We'll see if I covered or closed all of those gaps. And the reason being, when we go, okay, and when we finish here, you can see it cut around my little line. Okay, so it's looking for the line to cut around. So if you have a gap, it's going to keep following the line and come on inside your design. And if you want more ideas for what you can do, we have done past episodes with cutting out stamps. There's a couple different things we've done. So here this is always what, which one am I doing? Scan to cut data means I want to make a cut file, but I don't want to cut the material on the mat. Direct cut means I've got what I want on the mat. Let's cut it out. So that's what we're doing. Okay, and it's in grayscale mode. If you needed color mode, you could do that here. And I mentioned before, let's see. Okay, so it's telling me, can you please put the scanner down? Yes, I can. And that button is on just on that side of the machine. So it's going to scan in. And remember, we don't care about the insides because that's not what we're trying to cut. We're just trying to cut out around the outside. Okay, now we're going to see what it says. So we can see here, it's actually recognizing everybody pretty nicely too. Okay, so I'm going to pull this in. I'm not sure how well you can see out there, but there are, whoops, go back, oh, cancel. There are lines where the paper ends because it's obviously there kind of shows a line between the paper and the mat. And the machine picks up on it. I just pull this in just inside of there. Now, another thing you can do if you're wanting to cut differently. So if you want to cut different widths, I can just say, how about these two up here? Okay. And then I can take a look. And you see how it's going? It's going in and out a lot on those certain areas with the little needles. And I'm not surprised. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, for now, because if I push this out, can you see the difference there? You see how at least can you see how it gets darker? So the darker,
you can see that really good, May.
So the darker is it going, of all the little, let me show you the stamp so you can see what I'm talking about. All this area, that's it going in between every little, because remember, it's following the line. So that's it going in between every little needle and being very intricate. If I push this out so the outline is outside a little more, it does that less. And there I'm real happy with that. I could even go more if I wanted. So it's going to get less and less kind of crazy the further I push out. I'm going to go with a 0.08. Okay. And we're going to go through this process twice. So we're going to cut these guys and then we'll come back and cut some others. And then we'll color and assemble. So it's going to cut. We have half cut turned off. And it's going to take 1 minute. So I'll move this just a little bit so you can see. It's just going to cut out. I'm just going to make sure that watercolor paper, I tell you, it's heavy. It's heavy stuff. And sometimes it lifts off. So when I'm doing watercolor paper, I always kind of keep an eye on it to make sure everything is tacked down enough. And it should be.
That's a good idea, May. So just out of curiosity, if their mat is not super sticky, should they put some tape around it, or how would you stick it down a little
Absolutely. That's a really good idea. And actually, I do that a lot with watercolor paper. This is a brand new mat. Otherwise, I probably would put down just some masking tape or washi tape around the edges of the paper, because you'll see, I'll show you here. I'll move this a little more. You see how the bottom is lifting up? And it's nothing to do with, and that's not even, this is a brand new, very sticky mat. The bottom is lifting up on that. And I'm just going to lift these off so you can see. The bottom is lifting off because watercolor paper is so heavy and so straight. It wants to hold straight. So it's just lifting off the mat. So here you can see, you see how going outside more just made it so that it's cutting around all those little needles, but it's not doing all the inside. So that gives us a really pretty edge. And here's our little puppy. So cute. Okay, so I'm going to trim off the top of this. And if you're wondering what that would look like for if you needed to tape, we do not need to tape this down. But if you're wondering what that would look like, I have a little bit of actual ScanNCut branded from a trade show. So maybe you need all of it, or in my case, I'm just going to put it across the top. So this is going to do two things. It'll keep, you see how this end keeps wanting to lift up. It'll keep that from happening on the front, which is really important because you don't want the little sensor to feel it lifting up and get mad at you and say, okay, well, you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to fix that. We don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to say okay. And I'm going to go back because I need to rescan, right? Because I moved everything. Remember, if you move everything, you've got to rescan. I'm excited about these. Aren't those fun? So fun. And it can be anything. It can be any image you want. And this is stamping, yes, but you could do clip art. You could do patterns on fabric, patterns on paper. I know Angela will tell you it can get overwhelming only because, oh my goodness, the options you've got and the fun you're going to have. Okay, so I'm going to try to bring this down here like so. That should be good. So if everybody looks good, and they do, it's got a few little wiggles, and I know what that's about. I know that that's because the stamp that I stamped, I smudged a little bit. That's okay. So what I'm going to do now, say okay. And you can cut right on the line. I just find for this, it looks better with a little outside the line. So I'm going to cut this time. The last time I did 0.08. This time I'll do 0.04. It's personal preference and what you feel like you want. Neither is right, neither is wrong. Okay, so it's saying it'll cut. So now watch. It's going to do it again. We're just going to cut all those little guys out. And that tape's just going to help keep everybody in place. Although once it flattens out on the mat a lot, I will kind of press my fingers lightly just to reinforce that everybody should stay where they are and behave themselves.
That's a good way to put it.
And you can see it just goes right around. And you can also see it makes sense when I say, it's got to have a line like on this, where the line break is. It would then come in here and follow. Remember, it's just following the line. So it's going to follow, and it would cut this whole inside piece out because of that gap. So you just want to keep that in mind, that it's just looking for a line to follow. And it doesn't care if the line was there from the stamp or the sticker or if you put the line there. It just wants a line.
So May, I should mention that while this is cutting and while May's showing you this tutorial, you can leave your questions in the comments below on YouTube and Facebook, and Brother's social team is in there answering them. We are not bringing them up on screen today because we pre-recorded this, but we will still check back if there's any questions that you have. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to unload my mat and I'm going to scoot the machine out of our way because now we really party. And the washi tape or masking tape does not hurt your mat. It's not sticky enough. It's not going to do anything bad to your mat. If you have heavier materials, or like sometimes I play with thermoplastic and cosplay stuff that can get really heavy. So you really have to use a mat with that. Let me put my little dust cover back on, because if I don't, in about an hour, I'm going to regret that. So I'll drop it to the floor. It'll pick up pet hair. It'll be a whole thing. We don't want that. Okay. So look at, we've got all, and you can see, you can play with different outlines. This one here, that's the narrower one. If you like it with the thicker outline, if you like the thinner outline, it's up to you. I don't like cutting right on the line just because I like to be able to see the line. So I feel like having that little edge is just nice. So then we can do whatever we would like. If we would like watercolor, if we would like pen work, there's just not a wrong answer. So I'm just going to put a little bit. We'll see. We'll do a couple of them here real quick. And you can spend a lot of time on this, or you can make it really, really fast. I really can't stress enough. There's just not a wrong answer here if you want to do this one way or another. There's just whatever you would like. Go right ahead, have fun with it, and enjoy the process, right? I mean, it's a creative process, so I always try, you know, if we're doing gifts and that kind of thing especially, I want to have some fun with it. And I want to think about the people that I'm gifting to, as well as just kind of, I don't know, just having a good time, having some fun with it, seeing what I come up with here. I'm trying to find my palest little pink here because I'm doing kind of a pink, and it's going to come out a little darker than I want, but that's okay because I'm going to take some water and my water brush, and we're just going to glide over that real gently. So a water brush is just a paintbrush that has a water reservoir in it. There's nothing special. It's no different than a paintbrush, just that you don't have to keep redipping your water because you've already got water built in. So paintbrush, water brush, whatever you've got. And if you want to blend your tree a little, you can. If you want to add, if we wanted to add like, oh, I don't know, glitter, sparkly fun, which I think I might do, we could. And we could just put, I mean, we can just put it in the middle of a card if we want to, if you just want to put the one thing. We could also layer, so we could go, I think that's what I'm going to do here. We'll layer little Mr. Frosty here, so we'll give him some color. And remember I said about that hat of his, how it's not a problem. It's really not. We're just going to take our pen, and actually I shouldn't do that over that. That is one thing I will tell you, is I try to make sure and not, at least not too terribly, make a mess of the card itself. So I try to work a little more off of the finished card, just so that if I make any smudgies or, you know, do anything funky that I wish I hadn't done, it's just on the stamped image. Remember, worst case scenario, you just cannot stand what you made. Toss the little piece of paper, start over again. Not a problem. And I'm going to give him little pink polka dots. So these are just watercolor pens. You could use like traditional watercolors. I tend to like the watercolor pens for the lives just because they're so fast and so easy that we can, you know, we can get more technique and more talking about different things without spending quite so much time on the coloring. And you know what? Quick and easy is always a good thing in my book. I am always a fan if something is super easy and quick to do. Because goodness knows, we have all got to-do lists, right? I'm sure everybody does for summer. There's always things to be done. There's always things we've got to make time for and make room for. And if we can make some room for some creativity here and there, I am all about it. So I'm just going to touch up his hat a little more just because it's just, I want a little darker. And because it's a little damp, it's going to help just kind of blend things around instead of being quite so harsh. But you can see when I said I'm not worried about the hat, it's not going to be a problem. It's so not a problem. Everything, you know, it's our crafting and we want to have a good time. We want to just relax into it. So do that as much as you can versus try to avoid the stress out. I know it can be hard. We've all been there on projects that are going sideways and we get a little stressed. It happens. It happens. But if we can try to keep things upbeat, try to keep things happy and positive, it's always a good idea. I'm going to give him green buttons. Just why not? Okay, so we could do this easily. So these are just two different pieces of paper. I would just glue this to a blank card. And I'm working on 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which is pretty standard size for a card. I want this to go on this side of him, so I'm going to put him on this side. And then and this is just double-sided tape. See, I've got that tiny little smudgy there that I'm not the wildest about, so I can just stick that there. And then if I wanted to, I could use some green thread to accent. I mean, there's lots and lots of different ways that we could dress this up. I want to keep going and show you another idea here. So we can come back and look at that in a moment. We'll get these little guys all worked up. Let's see. We'll get them. We'll pull out some watercolor just to mix it up here. We've got different colors, different types. And I'm just going to get some water on this. So I'm just getting some water on these. These are just regular old watercolors, just so they start to blend. We got a nice little look here. And I don't know what colors I want, so I'm just kind of throwing some color on all of it. Okay. So we'll do this guy kind of a lighter color. And if I have too much water, I can always let it absorb on a towel or something if it's gotten a little too much saturation with water. You can also just let it dry.
That little dog is so cute, May.
Cute. We'll make this guy a little darker. So you can spend a lot of time blending and, doing all the fancy stuff if you want to. The great thing about the ScanNCut is all that time that we used to spend fussy cutting all of these things, no longer. No longer. Okay, so we got those little pups, and then if we want to maybe use some green, we can use some green. So you can just do whatever colors you want to do. You can see why I end up with pens, though, because there's more water involved with the watercolor, which generally will mean that I end up kind of like waiting around for water to dry a little more with this versus the pen. That's the why, if you're ever wondering, why does she lean on the pen so much? Well, with the pens, it just goes faster. That's all. And I know coloring can be fun to watch, but then you get a point where you're like, okay, that's enough coloring. Excuse me. Okay, so I'll get that guy with a little bit, and then I'll use the water brush to lighten it up. So we can have a red, we can have a green. This one, I'm just using the water that's on the brush, and it's enough for me. Okay, so, just whatever, whatever you're thinking of, whatever you want to try. I just always remind myself, there's no wrong answer here. Whatever we end up doing, it'll be cute, it'll be liked, it'll be appreciated, right? Who doesn't like getting something in the mail? I know I don't get very much fun mail these days. I think mostly it's, like bills, and it's not exactly exciting stuff. I always like getting something fun in the mail, so getting a handmade card is always a really special treat, I think. Okay, we'll just do a little more here. And if you're wondering if you could pre-color, you could. I tend to not pre-color only because I try to keep the line issue as clean and as simple for the machine as possible. And if I pre-color, I just have to dab a bit of water. There's just a little too much water there, causing a little problem for me. If I pre-color, the risk that I run is just that the machine is going to struggle to see the lines, because if I go, there's a couple spots here where I've just slightly gone outside the line, that color may or may not get read by the machine. And if the machine reads it, then I have to be concerned about, now I've got something new to deal with here. Now I've got this, the machine is reading the color, and now I've got to fight with it about where the line is. I don't want to do that. This is, supposed to be easy. So the easiest thing to do is to color it after you've cut it out. Now, if you're struggling with holding things down, you could always leave it on the mat. So you could always leave it on the mat and sort out your coloring and then take it off the mat if that makes it easier for you. So that's another option for you if you're trying to get the best of all worlds, right? So let's see. And you could do whatever colors you want. You could make, this is kind of Christmassy, but we could make him with pinks and blues, and it could be for a birthday. So for this guy, let's see which one is going to be drier. I think this guy is a little bit drier. You could put this on adhesive foam if you want some dimension, if you want it to be raised up. Or you could just tape it down with double-sided adhesive like I am. Whoop, and you can see he's a little bit wet still. Let me grab a paper towel here. So he dabbed a little watercolor. Don't worry, I can wash that off the desk, no problem. But I'll just dab a little of that off there. So I can also just kind of put him here. And I'm going to kind of center him, top center. And then we can take, any sentiment you want. And you could use a stamp. You could do a computer font, whatever you like. I'm just going to go like that. And there he is. So easy. If you want, and other thing I like about this is, and you can see this is just paper that I've stitched. So I've just stitched white paper to green paper. This one is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So this one would be, it's 3 3/4 by 5, or no, by 4 3/4. So I put a little bit more on the top and bottom than on the sides, but that part's up to you. And just run through the sewing machine, just a regular old straight stitch. Super easy. Here's a dry one that is already done. So you can put whatever sentiment you wanted. Put your stamp, put your sentiment, and all that does for you is, and it could be this guy, it could be, I could have used the snowman. You can put whoever you like, just right there, stamp, sentiment, done. And if you don't have a sewing machine, or if you don't want to do stitching, another option you could do is you could get that pen back out. Okay, and we could just do a pen line just to add that little bit of contrast and color. You could add a pen line. If you're a little wiggly and you're like, oh, I don't love how wiggly that looks. If you do a couple pen lines, then the wiggly becomes kind of intentional.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I think everyone's going to love the wiggly line because I love that.
Well, yeah, I think multiple wiggly lines, all of a sudden it's intentional. And if you're doing something like, I feel like he could use, like, I don't know, maybe another holly leaf or maybe another something. So you get to a point with your card or your project where you're thinking, I feel like it could use more, use another. Well, you can do that. Absolutely. You'll just have to get something, and you can always work in batches with this too, which I really like. If I want to color and color and color, I can color everybody, right? I can make everybody however it is that I want them. And, if I don't want it on a card, I can make gift tags for the gifts. If I'd rather make gift tags, I can certainly do that. Whatever it might be, whatever it is that I'm wanting to do. And if I wanted to add glitter, if I wanted to add sequins and rhinestones, I mean, whatever it is that creatively I'm thinking, boy, I really want this. Well, we can make that happen. And it's kind of nice, I think, to be able to work in a way where, okay, we're going to make this batch of cards, but we're not even going to think about the finished product. We're just coloring a whole bunch of stuff and having fun coloring. Then later we can think, okay, now I'm going to come through and think about what I'm using it on, or where I'm putting this, how I'm making this work. So you can work with your mood. If you're in an assembly mood, assemble the things or cut all the things. If you're in a creative mood, take some time and do some coloring. And this also helps if you're short on time. This can help you break it down. So you're doing things in like 15 minutes, 20-minute time chunks. So you're not trying to do it all at once. Look at that. But you see,
how did you get that dog, the one at the top, the one at the very top there on your table? How did you get it? It looks like it's sticking out a little bit. Is it just a couple pieces of tape?
That's the foam adhesive that I talked about. If you wanted to put foam adhesive under there, you'll just get like, I don't know, like an 1/8 of an inch or so lift if you're wanting to have it raised up, versus if you just want it flat on the card. It can be personal preference. Also, sometimes I'll choose this mails well because the foam will just smush, so you don't have to do anything extra or pay extra for a little bit of foam. But you can, sometimes it can look nice to have it lifted up. Like this guy would probably look cute. We do something, I don't know, do something creative and make a little tag and then have this guy like lifted up here. It can be really cute.
I really like that. I know you mentioned that, but I didn't really realize it. And I'm sure some people that maybe rolled in are like, how did you do that? Because those cards are so expensive when they have the little layers.
They are. And you know what? Because you've used your ScanNCut and you've got it all pre-cut out, you just need, like for our little dog with the gifts, little something about that size, you only need 1 or 2 little squares. That only has 2 squares of foam adhesive. It holds it up.
So cute. So I'm just curious, and I'm sure you are too. Everyone watching this, who's going to get a jump start on their Christmas cards? Oh, first of all, I think I have 15 birthdays in between now and then that you always inspire me to do this and make the cards now. My only challenge is remember where I put them.
Yeah, having a spot where you put all the stuff that you worked ahead on is definitely helpful. And you know what? This idea, yeah, you could do birthday. You could sit down and have a whole bunch of birthday images or birthday cakes or whatever it is you want and do all the different colors you want. I'm a really big fan of when we can like make a batch of something, right? Like if we're baking cookies, we're not baking cookies one at a time. That would be madness. We're not mixing and making a single cookie at a time. Same goes for birthday or Christmas or whatever cards. If you're making cards or if you're making gift tags or whatever, work in a batch and like get really into the coloring and find all your coloring and then go and assemble. Or then, like in this case, you could, if you're going to sew or draw lines, you could do all the sewing. You could do all the drawing of lines at one time, glue it all together at one time. You can really divide it out.
I like that. And I like the way you said, if you're in the mood to do this part, do this part, because it's definitely a creative process there. And putting the things together are totally different than when you're decorating them. So kind of like, although you said only 1 cookie, that's usually all that turns out in my batch. Does that matter?
I'm sure they all taste good.
They just might not look good. May, this has been such a cute project. Those of you watching, do you have any questions? Drop them in the chat because Brother's social team is there and we're always looking back at those. I have to say, this is so much fun. And this goes perfectly with a couple of your other lessons that you showed me on how to make cards. This just even gave up to the game a little bit. A little more details, but so easy.
And you can keep it really quick and simple. You can get really intricate with like a whole scene. You could also layer things. I mean, the more you think about it, the more things we could do. So if you didn't want a basic square or rectangle, you could use the ScanNCut to cut like a scalloped edge or a fancy shape if you want something fancy. So really, as usual, your creativity is the only limit. So there's a lot we can do.
Absolutely. I know somebody's going to ask, what ScanNCut are you using today, Meg?
So this is the ScanNCut DX230Di. And here's the great thing. For this tutorial, it doesn't matter. You could have the original ScanNCut and it's exactly the same process because we were just scanning. We didn't use any built-in patterns. We were just scanning something. So any ScanNCut you have, I know every once in a while we've got a tutorial where it's like, I'm sorry, but only the DX people will this work for you, or only the Disney ScanNCut models have this. In this situation, it does every single ScanNCut. This is a kind of a thing that we have been loving and making with ScanNCut since day one. Was scan it and cut it.
Yeah, which is what really makes Brother ScanNCut so awesome. That look at how easy you just did that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that you just scanned it, cut it perfect. One thing about the blade, did you just use a standard blade on cutting that thicker paper there?
Yes. So with the auto blade in the DX machine, if your material is ever too thick or it doesn't cut all the way through, the auto blade will just come back through and do a second pass. So you never have to worry with the regular blade. It'll come back through and do it again. The only thing I would say is if you are doing something with like watercolor paper, can be rough on blades. So I just wouldn't use a brand new, shiny, perfect blade. If you're going to do watercolor paper, I would either, if you've got an older blade, fine, go ahead, keep using it. Or if you're using a brand new blade at the moment, maybe I usually will keep an older blade around so that if I'm doing watercolor paper and it's a simple shape. So these are all very, very simple outline shapes. There's not going to be a lot of fuss or a lot of problem. I'll put a little older blade back in only because the watercolor paper is the fibers and everything, it dulls the blades fast. So, we talk a lot about it. How often do you replace your blade? It depends on what you cut. The watercolor paper will make you replace the blade faster. So if you keep an older blade around, or if you've got a blade that it's not great on detail vinyl, but it's not terrible blade on straightaways, maybe set that aside and use that for things like watercolor paper.
And save that. That's a great idea. A great tip. You are the reason that I have watercolor paper here, along with I found some great little pens like you do. If you are new to following May, you just better get your pen and paper out and make a list, because she always has the funnest things to add. First of all, Brother ScanNCut. After that, all the things, creativity is like pretty much endless in your world over there.
I try, and I know YouTube, I'm doing YouTube again. So I've got lots of YouTube videos coming, and they've been posting every week. So I'm excited to be back to that and sharing more ideas about what the heck is going on in here.
Wonderful. Well, by the way, if you can see scrolling down below, there's brothersews.com. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of that website, you will find the crafting blog and the sewing blog links, and also go to their YouTube channels. If you subscribe, that's one of the easiest ways to find out when the live shows are. We're also on Facebook. There's events posted, and be sure to like and share and follow all of them. Brother Sews and Brother Crafts. But also I have May's website down below in case you're new to watching her. She's got a ton of great YouTube videos. I have my own contact down there as well. You got mayflaum.com, angelawolf.com, and most importantly, brothersews.com. May, this was a great tutorial. I'm looking forward to seeing what you have planned for next month.
I wish I knew. It's been so busy in here, I haven't paused to check the schedule. I'll have to look and see, but I'm sure we'll have fun. We always have fun in here.
We always have fun. So be sure to leave your comments below. Let Brother know how much you love these shows, and they'll keep them rolling out to you. And May, I love this tutorial. I'm going to get my things out and start my cards now. And I'm going to find a spot and text it to you. So next holiday season, when I'm like, okay, where are my cards? You can text me back.
Oh, perfect.
We're on shelf number 2. All right, everyone. Have a great day. May, thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.